Hi, my name's Aspen. I'm the other half of Team Coconut Heads. Today we're going to talk about Mitama Shizume, or Shinto meditation that's taught in this particular lineage of Aikido. My teacher once described Mitama Shizume as doing Aikido with ourselves. I've come to find in my practice that for me this mostly meant dealing with the pain, the injuries, the conditioned, habituated patterns that I've learned throughout my life to try to protect myself that when I put them into practice, usually bring about the things I'm trying to protect myself from. It's said that Aikido is misogi, or purification, do, a healing path of awakening. I believe that if we're just practicing the physical techniques of Aikido, we're really missing the core, important part of it, letting it change us. And this form of meditation can do just that. It's a healing practice to help transform us from the inside, so that if we are faced with the potential for conflict, we'll be more able to resolve that conflict in a healthy way, whether or not we use our physical techniques.
So there are many different traditions or practices of meditation. You may have heard of transcendental meditation or zazen or some other form. Mitama Shizume comes from the Japanese Shinto religion and specializes in healing and, like most forms of meditation, quieting the mind and helping us to bring our awareness into our body. In today's video, we're going to go over the nature of the practice, why we practice, and the benefits that it can offer us. So, how do we practice? It's recommended that you start by laying down, so savasana or corpse pose, or if you're not familiar with yoga's postures, just laying comfortably on your back without your arms or legs crossed. You may do this for, say, 2 months or so of regular practice. Ultimately, the main body of your practice should be sitting upright, either cross-legged like traditional meditation sitting pose, or in seiza if your knees and ankles can handle that. Another option to consider is standing meditation or even walking meditation if you're familiar with these practices. Ultimately, the goal will be to take the meditative experience, the awareness practice of Mitama Shizume, out into your regular life in the world itself, driving, walking, interacting with people. The goal of this practice isn't something that we practice in isolation from the world, but ultimately something that we practice daily at all times while in the world. So why do we practice? My teacher once described Mitama Shizume as doing Aikido with ourselves. If you look back on, say, the story of Miyamoto Musashi, you can see how many times he used emotional manipulation in order to gain an advantage over his opponent. I'm sure that you can think of examples in your own lives where you perhaps got upset and said or did things that you're not proud of looking back, or perhaps didn't help the situation resolve itself in the most Aiki way or the most beneficial way for everyone involved. Beyond the aspect of healing ourselves and allowing us to stay more calm in a given situation, if we're less distracted by the random thoughts in our minds, we're better able to deal with the reality of what's in front of us in the moment. The incoming attack, training partner, traffic, whatever that might be. Most of those things usually deserve our attention much more than the random thoughts that happen to go through our minds. So we practice this meditation in order to heal ourselves, free ourselves from our mind, and deal with what's real in the present moment. In terms of when to practice, uh, it's said about meditation that 10 minutes a day, every day of the week, is better than 60 minutes a day, one day a week. And I find that to be the case for Mitama Shizume as well. Additionally, you may find that if you practice just before bed, it might make it more difficult to sleep. Practicing in the morning, if you're able to get up for it, can help set the mood for the day and might make the most difference in your life. So, this practice should probably best be approached in stages. Initially, while you're laying down, you may spend the entire practice focusing exclusively on keeping your awareness with the sensation of compression, the feeling in your body as it rests on the ground. For most people, that's a challenge in itself, to simply stay present with the felt experience. Now, as you're better able to do that and stay present with it, you can progress along to the other stages of the practice. But for these first few months, staying with the felt experience is enough of a practice. If you find that you are distracted by your thoughts, you want to not feed those thoughts or even resist them. Resisting them kind of just strengthens them, anyways. So the best thing to do is just go back to the sensation of compression. Sometimes meditation teachers might say to label thinking as thinking and then go back to compression. And if that works for you, that's a good practice. But ultimately, you want to give your thoughts no additional attention once you realize that you've been distracted by them, and just simply return to that sensation, that felt experience of your weight on the ground if you're laying. Now, if you're sitting, it won't be your entire body, of course. It'll be your feet and your hips or whatever's in surface or in contact with the earth. If you're standing, it's going to be just simply the weight underneath your feet. But the intent here is to bring our attention away from our mind and our thoughts and into our felt physical experience. Once you're able to stay with the sensation of compression underneath your body for, even just 3 to 5 seconds it's making progress. It's okay. We should at this point be in our sitting or standing posture, and we begin to try to stretch our awareness to expand what we're capable of perceiving at a given time. Now, we want to avoid the potential of jumping back and forth. So, as we move from compression to include our sensation of balance, we don't want to hop from focusing exclusively on compression to focusing exclusively on balance, but rather stretch our capacity to be aware of multiple things so that we're aware of both, but we're feeling both sensations at the same time. So while we start with compression, we then add sensation of balance, and we should place our awareness in the center of our body, or the hara. Here, we try to feel both compression and balance, and then we try not to pretend that balance is just simply not falling over or some kind of static experience that's not changing. In reality, balance represents a relationship between our body and the world around us. And as such, it is a dynamic and constantly changing experience, something always in relationship, dynamically changing. So we are feeling compression and balance. Once we can do that for several seconds at a time before thinking about cheeseburgers and ice cream or whatever else happens to pop into our brain, we then can stretch it again to feel the nature of our hearts, what it is that our hearts are feeling in this given moment. So when we do that, we create a vertical line between compression, balance, and our hearts, each stacked on top of the other, feeling each of these things at the same time in this present moment. Once we can stay with our heart for a few seconds at a time before getting distracted, we can then stretch again to also include the sensation of verticality. If you're familiar with Aikido training, I sometimes refer to unbendable spine, using the metaphor of unbendable arm to represent this quality of reaching up through the top of our head, connecting heaven and earth. So in this state, we are simultaneously aware of compression, balance, our felt experience in our heart, and this verticality that reaches through our spine. Then lastly, once we are able to be aware of these things all at the same time, we then begin to reach out in all directions, hearing, feeling, taking in, listening to the reality around us in this given moment. So again, compression, balance, our heart, verticality, and reaching out in all directions. Simply listening present with what is. We've talked about the physical aspect of practice, how we lay or sit or stand. And we've talked about the awareness, where we place our awareness and how that progresses as our training deepens. Let's take a moment to talk about our breathing. So, the breath actually can have an influence over our brainwave patterns. By slowing our breath, we can actually help to drop ourselves into a trance state where healing and learning is more accessible to us. We will typically breathe in and out for 18 to 20 seconds in the beginning of our practice. Later on, this may be extended, but 18 to 20 seconds is an excellent place to start. So we can provide a sound file, either 12 minutes or 22 minutes long, with this bell that you can use for your meditation practice. If you don't have access to that, you don't need it. You can just breathe in or out for whatever period of time you're able to without that bell file. But it's a useful tool, a kind of measure, so that you don't have to try to pay attention to that. You're trying to pay attention to compression, balance, your heart, verticality, and reaching out in all directions. That's where we want to place our attention. So it's handy to have the bell file to help guide your breath without paying too much attention to it. So when we start, the bell will ring and you'll breathe out gently, smoothly, out through the mouth. You may place your tongue at the top, back of your teeth, and you may restrict your breathing just slightly. It'll sound something like, I found for myself that this noise, this restricted breathing, can be a helpful reminder when I might be distracted by my thoughts. I might notice that I'm no longer breathing out. It can also help ensure that we're breathing smoothly and consistently instead of having tension in our belly. Now, when we're breathing, we want to try to breathe from our diaphragm rather than our upper chest. And we breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Now, 18 to 20 seconds, especially in the beginning, or if we've had a particularly stressful day, can be a little challenging. You may not make it the full length of that period of time. So there are things that you can do to help with that. So if you're breathing out and you feel that there's just too much tension in your belly and you can't breathe out anymore, it's okay to breathe in just a little bit. And when you do, you may find that you can then breathe out for another couple of seconds. Conversely, if you're breathing in and you find that you're expanded and you're starting to have tension in your torso, it's okay to breathe out a little bit. And then you may find that you can continue breathing in for another few seconds. But that said, it's also okay to just rest with being full or rest with being empty until the bell rings, and then you shift to the other form of breathing, either breathing in or breathing out.
In this video, we've talked about what Mitama Shizume is, where it comes from, how we practice physically with our awareness, and the role that breath plays in our practice. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.